Close your eyes for a moment. I want you to imagine a world without a simple convenience you take for granted every single day. Picture a scorching summer afternoon in the late 19th century. The sun is absolutely unrelenting, beating down on the roof, turning your house into an oven. The air is thick, heavy, and completely still. You walk into your kitchen, desperate for a cold drink of water or maybe a piece of fresh fruit. But you look around and there is no refrigerator, no hum of a compressor, no glowing light when you open a door. Instead, sitting on a wooden table is a piece of meat you bought just yesterday. In this suffocating heat, it's already turning a sickly shade of gray. The smell of decay is starting to fill the room. If you eat it, you might not survive the night. That was the grim reality of summer. It was a season of rot. Before the gentle, reliable hum of the modern fridge became the heartbeat of our homes, finding cold was a dangerous, almost impossible pursuit. Harvesting natural ice was a brutal, unforgiving industry. Men risked their lives on frozen lakes, cutting massive blocks of ice and shipping them across the world before they melted into nothing. But humanity needed more. We wanted to master the cold. And so, the race to build the first artificial cooling machines began. But these early inventions were terrifying. They were massive, clunky iron beasts, and they didn't just cost a small fortune to own. They were literally ticking time bombs in the kitchen. They relied on highly volatile, lethal chemicals like ammonia and sulfur dioxide. Imagine sleeping in your bed, completely unaware, while your primitive refrigerator slowly leaks a heavy, toxic, invisible gas down the hallway and into your room. One spark, one deep breath, and it was over. But today, you are safe. You can simply walk into your kitchen, open a sleek door, and feel that rush of cool, refreshing air against your face. Welcome to our 365-day journey of discovery. A place where we uncover the hidden magic behind the ordinary world. I am your guide, and I am thrilled to have you here. Today, we are setting off for our very first destination. We call it Winter in a Rectangular Box. This is not just a story about chilling water or keeping milk fresh. This is the epic, unbelievable saga of how a simple, inanimate object defeated the seasons, transformed global civilization, and changed the course of humanity forever. So, sit back, relax, and let's explore the magic sitting right inside your kitchen. To truly understand why we love the refrigerator so much, we have to travel back in time, back to the 19th century, a time before compressors, before electricity, before you could simply push a button and get crushed ice. A time when humanity didn't just endure winter, we had to harvest it. Imagine, for a moment, that you are an ice merchant. It's the dead of winter in North America. The wind is howling across the plains, and the temperature is well below freezing. You are standing on a vast, frozen lake. But you aren't there to admire the view. You are there to cut massive, glowing blue blocks of ice right out of the frozen water. It was a constant battle against the elements. It was brutal, back-breaking labor. Men used giant, heavy handsaws to carve through the thick ice, pitting human muscle against unforgiving nature. These massive blocks, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, were hauled onto horse-drawn wooden sleds and packed tightly with sawdust to insulate them from the heat. From there, they were loaded onto grand wooden ships and transported across the entire world. From the freezing lakes of New England, these ships sailed all the way to the sweltering ports of India, Australia, and the Caribbean. It was a massive global empire built entirely on frozen water. Ice was no longer just weather, it was a highly prized commodity. For a brief period, people believed this was the ultimate solution. Cold was considered a luxury, a miracle brought from afar to preserve their food and cool their drinks. But this massive global system had a fatal, inescapable flaw. It relied entirely on the unpredictability of weather. If the winter was too mild, the ice crop simply failed. If the ships were delayed by storms, the precious cargo melted into useless puddles before it ever reached the shore. Humanity was entirely at the mercy of the seasons. We realized we couldn't just harvest cold. We needed a way to create it on demand. We needed a machine. And that is when the mad, dangerous race for artificial refrigeration truly began. As the 19th century faded, the world was rapidly modernizing. Cities were growing, and the demand for fresh food was skyrocketing. The unreliable ice ships simply couldn't keep up anymore. We needed a revolution. We needed to bring winter indoors, permanently. And so, inventors began tinkering with physics and chemistry, trying to build the first mechanical refrigerators. At first, it seemed like a miracle. Imagine seeing a machine actually create cold out of thin air for the very first time. It was absolute magic. But this magic came with a terrifying price tag. The early pioneers were playing with forces they barely understood, and the machines they built were far from the quiet, friendly appliances we know today. They were mechanical monsters. Let's step inside a kitchen in the 1920s. In the corner sits a massive, vibrating beast of iron and wood. It is loud. It rattles the floorboards. But the noise wasn't the real problem. The true danger was hiding inside its pipes. To create that artificial cold, these early refrigerators relied on highly reactive, toxic chemicals. We are talking about ammonia, methyl chloride, and sulfur dioxide. These are not things you want anywhere near your food, let alone in your home. If a single pipe cracked or a valve gave way under pressure, the results were absolutely catastrophic. The machine meant to keep your family safe from spoiled food suddenly became the deadliest thing in the house. And the pipes did crack. Frequently. There were horrifying headlines in the newspapers. Entire families would go to sleep completely unaware that their refrigerator was quietly leaking a heavy, suffocating cloud of toxic gas into their home. Some of these gases were highly flammable. A simple spark from a light switch could level an entire building. It was a crisis. People were terrified of their own kitchens. The scientific community was at a breaking point. They realized that if artificial refrigeration was ever going to change the world, it couldn't just be effective. It had to be safe. They needed a chemical miracle. And the brightest minds of the generation, including a man named Albert Einstein, decided it was time to step in. In the winter of 1926, a brilliant physicist read a tragic newspaper headline. A family in Berlin had been killed in their sleep by a toxic leak from their refrigerator. It was a senseless tragedy. But that physicist was Albert Einstein. He, along with his former student Leo Szilard, decided they had to stop this. Together, they designed a completely new kind of machine, the Einstein-Szilard refrigerator. It was an absolute engineering marvel. It had no moving parts, no mechanical seals to break, no toxic gases to leak into the bedroom. It worked purely on the elegant laws of thermodynamics, using heat to create cold. It was a stroke of genius that proved refrigeration could be reimagined. But while Einstein's design was incredibly safe, it wasn't quite efficient enough for massive, worldwide commercial use. The industry was still desperate. They needed a chemical that was stable, non-toxic, and non-flammable. Enter a team of chemists in 1928. They locked themselves in a lab, searching for the absolute holy grail of refrigeration. And against all odds, they found it. They synthesized a completely new class of chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. They called it Freon. It was considered a modern miracle. You could literally breathe it in without dying. You could hold a match to it and it wouldn't explode. Almost overnight, Freon replaced the deadly gases, and the refrigerator finally became a safe, beloved household appliance. So how does this magical box actually work? How do we conquer the heat? Here is the most beautiful secret of refrigeration. A refrigerator does not actually make cold. Cold is not a physical thing you can create. Cold is simply the absence of heat. The entire system is designed to trap the heat hiding inside your leftovers, pull it out of the box, and push it into the air of your kitchen. It's a magical sponge for heat, a continuous, invisible river of physics flowing right inside your home. The chemical refrigerant absorbs the heat, flows outside the box, releases it, and returns to do it all over again. That is the true Eureka moment. We didn't create winter. We just figured out how to banish the summer heat from a tiny rectangular box. Think about how much that magical sponge for heat has changed our world. Before the refrigerator, human life was tied to the seasons and the land. But once we conquered the cold, everything shifted. The refrigerator didn't just keep our milk fresh, it completely reshaped global agriculture. It made the modern supermarket possible. It fundamentally changed the structure of the family, freeing people from the daily, exhaustive chore of hunting for unspoiled food. We built entire modern cities in the middle of deserts, all because we figured out how to trap the heat and push it away. Today, the refrigerator is just a quiet, humming box in the corner of your kitchen. It's so ordinary, so reliable, that we barely even notice it. But remember the dangerous journey it took to get here, from the brutal, freezing lakes of the ice harvesters to the explosive, deadly machines of the 1920s. Every time you reach for a cold drink, you are touching the culmination of centuries of human struggle, scientific brilliance, and sheer determination. You are holding a piece of conquered winter. So the next time you open that door in the middle of the night, bathed in that soft, familiar glow, take a moment to appreciate the magic. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden stories behind the everyday world, hit that subscribe button. We have 364 more days of discovery ahead of us. I'll see you at our next destination. Stay curious.